All right, for this stretch, we're going to be targeting the hip flexors, and this is, we're going to do it in the supine position, the client facing up on flat, his back on the table. So with this one, the client needs to be off the edge of the table, okay? So the client would most likely be facing up on the middle of the table center. So you're gonna have to ask the client, I'm gonna explain to you how to coach the client to get into the position. So Stephen, go ahead and sit up for me. Feel free to grab their hand if you'd like to support them. Scoot all the way to the edge of the table. I actually want you to stand up for me real quick, okay? So the biggest problem you'll have on this one is the client not being far forward enough off the table, okay? So sometimes I like to have the client just stand up first. All right, now go ahead and sit down, barely on there. Okay, so now Stephen is mostly off the table as far as possible, okay? Now what you'll have the client do is, now Stephen, I want you to fall on your back for me and grab one of your knees. So grab one of your knees and fall on the back. So have them grab the knee and then fall flat on their back. Now, this gets them halfway into the stretch because by having this cross stretch action and having them grab their knee, it intensifies the opposite hip. Okay, so it intensifies the stretch here. So what you're gonna do is, once the client's in this position, and this is how you can tell if the client's too far on the table, is when you go to press down on their knee, if the table is in the way, there shouldn't be more than 2 inches from where their glutes are to where the table ends. Okay, so because Stephen's hip flexors are tight, I'll let them stay there, but otherwise I might even ask the client to scoot down more to get in the proper position. So if the client is saying that they do not feel it, it's just one of the reasons could be that they're too far on the table and the table is preventing them from getting a stretch. Okay, so when this position, since we're starting with his left leg, I'm going to take my right leg, okay, and be on the outside of his body, okay, step around his foot that's hanging off, and bring my knee over his leg, so that way my knee is on the inside of his body, but my foot is on the outside of his body. So I'm wrapping around, so I have control over his leg and I can push forward and backward, okay? And then from there, the further forward that I push his foot under the table, the more of a stretch he's gonna get in his quad. And this is the first stretch here, as you're stretching the quad initially. So how's that feel there? Good. A little bit more, or is that good? That's good. That's good there. So with this, I can control how much he feels it in his quad by pushing the foot back, similar to the other two positions where when he's on his stomach and you push the leg up. That's the first one, is the quad. Okay, and you can just do this with your foot by standing straight up. Now with this foot, you can also put this onto your stomach or chest, and then you don't have to use any hands to hold it, and then you allow the client to relax, and then you have control over his body. This is one point that you have control over his body, and you can do that without too much effort. Okay. Now this was a hip flex. The second one is a hip flexor focused stretch. So what you'll do is keep this on your chest, and then you'll push down on this one, my right hand, on the top of his thigh. Okay, and you'll push down. How does that feel there? Keep going. Good. Right there. Okay. You'll push down until he feels it. Now he is pretty far on the table, so again, if they don't feel it, here's what you do if they do not feel it. Okay, so communicate to them. So you say, do you feel it, or a little bit more? Okay, and if they don't feel it and you're pushing pretty hard down into the floor, the first thing is have them scoot forward. The second thing is, the more that you push the foot forward that's bent, the more they're going to feel the hip flexor stretch. So I had to put a lot less effort for him to feel the stretch when I have his knee almost into his chest. Okay, so that's the second way. This is the easiest way to adjust the stretch if they don't feel it and you're pushing with a good amount of force over here, because if you're in the right position, the client's off the table and this knee is into their chest, you shouldn't have to use a lot of pressure to target the hip flexor. So I'm going to show you the other side. So what you'll do is you'll switch sides like this. So start by having the foot on the chest, push it forward. See how I push forward his foot raises up off the table. That is what I mean by the more you use this leg, the more you're going to target and isolate the hip flexor and take it to a more intense stretch. So what you'll do first is wrap your foot around his leg, and we're going to target the quad first. Right there. Okay. So we'll stretch the quad first. So you'll hold each of these stretches separately for at least 30 to 60 seconds. So hold the quad there for 30 to 60 seconds. Now this is a great one, this quad stretch and hip flexor, but the quad specifically is a great one to do PNF on. So go ahead and push against me, Stephen, and relax. So you can do PNF without very much effort because your foot is on the floor and he's pushing against your foot. The second one you can do is vibration. It's a really good one on here as well. It helps them relax. And you can also do PNF and vibration for the hip flexor as well. And then for this one, I'm going to stretch his hip flexor and then push straight down. Right there. Okay. Hold it for 30 to 60 seconds. Okay. So there's not very many variations in this one. The only variation is that you can adjust their hips forward with this point of control here, point of control pushing down, and also pulling the foot back, how far you have pulled the foot back. So those are the 3 points that you can, not really variations as much as the 3 points that you control the variables of the stretch that's happening here. So make sure you have the knee as far forward as it'll go. Now if you're focusing on the hip flexor and they have really tight quads, I would actually let their foot go back just a little bit, because if you pull it too far forward, they're going to feel it more in their quads and not their hip flexors. So if you're trying to target the hip flexors, let the foot go back just a little bit as you're pushing down to target the hip flexors there. Okay, so that's how you do the supine single leg hip flexor stretch. And when you take the client out of the stretch, go ahead and help them up.